Most people think they are practicing self-love. They think they're loving themselves when, in fact, they're actually sabotaging themselves. People use affirmations, they do nice things for themselves, they go to therapy, and oftentimes, without knowing it, most times, they're building their castle on quicksand. So, stay with me. If you can relate to that, if you can even imagine that's a possibility for you or somebody you know, because I'm going to show you how to build a solid foundation and what self-love really is and why it matters, why it's so essential, right? We've been sold this illusion that if we just speak it out, say this nice thing to ourselves, then that will make it happen, right? But just speaking quotations or doing bubble baths for ourselves, that's not going to do it. Why? Why? So what's the deal with affirmations, right? And in case you don't know what an affirmation is, I think everybody does at this point, but just in case, it's when we affirm something that we would like to be true. I am wealthy, I am sexy, I am confident, people like me, whatever it is. And in concept, it's not a bad idea. In reality, most of the time, though, not only does it not work, it actually makes things worse, right? Research shows this quite a lot. So why? Why is that the case? Because, right, one way of putting it is if we are smart enough to say, this is where I am and this is where I want to be, so I'm just going to say what I want to be true, well, we're also smart enough to know we're lying. It's not true. So what do we do? What happens then? Okay, let's take it further and make this really clear. So we speak the thing, and then another part of us goes, "Nuh-uh, that's not true. It's not true, right? I am wealthy. Dude, you can barely pay your rent. I am sexy. Man, nobody takes a second look at you, whatever it is, right? We all have that. I call that the mouse voice. We try and shush it sometimes, like it's over there in the corner and we throw a shoe at it, but everybody's got the mouse voice about something sooner or later. Some of us have it a lot, some of us have it a little bit. So, when we speak the thing, we affirm the thing, and then the mouse voice goes, "No, it's not true." Then, well, we know it's not true. Then we know. It's like, okay, it's not true. Worse, though, then we have to conclude, I'm also a liar, right? It got worse. Not only am I not that, I am this, which is where I was, but now I'm lower because I'm somebody who's lying to themselves. So, bit depressing, hey? There's good news, though, right? Because well, and let me say this, right? My mentor, Steve Hardison, calls this affirmations putting frosting on poop. It's what I referred to earlier. My favorite way of saying it is building a castle on a bed of quicksand, right? On something that is not stable. So we could say, we can create, we can make our vision statement for ourselves, for our company, our mission statement. We could do all of that. And stay with me, because there is a value that can be great. However, and when we hear the mouse voice, what we can do is go, ooh, the mouse has the key. The mouse has the solution. The mouse can help me out of the prison. What's the prison? The prison is self-hate. That sounds a bit harsh, right? There's a book, another of my coaches, John, recommended to me a couple of years ago called There's Nothing Wrong with You, Cherry Huber. And it goes through, she comes from a meditation perspective, teaches a lot about the different messages that a lot of us got growing up from our parents, from society, from teachers, right? Teachers, red pen syndrome, right? What is that? It's, you may or may not have had this experience. I'd had a lot of it in school when I would turn in my work, give my paper. When I would get it back, what would I see? Red pen. The red was just like a red light. Stop, right? Not go, stop. You got this wrong. And at that early age, for most of us, we didn't hear it as you got this wrong. We got it as you are wrong. You are not valuable. So in this book, Cherry goes through so many different ways that we've learned to hate ourselves. And that might sound strong. And if it does, just stay with it. Be curious about that for a moment, right? We've learned to hate ourselves. That's the poison. That's the quicksand, right? So how do we connect this though? In the US, there's something called the Declaration of Independence. Right? And a declaration is different than an affirmation. Now, this might sound like word spaghetti, just syntax. What's the difference? I'll tell you the difference for me. If I use an affirmation, right, and then I get the mouse voice, then what happens? I got a choice. I can shush the mouse voice, or I can attend to it. This is what I use for myself, and I work with my clients. What do we call it? Give the mouse the mic. Give the mouse the mic. So instead of throwing a shoe at it and saying, be quiet, we say, hey, I hear you, come over here, right? And I build a little stage with a little microphone, and I invite the mouse to come right up, and I say, please, I'm open. Say what you would like to say. My palms are up, right? No defense. Speak to me, right? And so the mouse, it's a part of us, right? It's a part of who we are. The negative voice, the part that hates ourselves, right? So when we do that, well, why don't we do that? Let's start with that. Why do most people not want to hear it? Because it hurts, right? It hurts to think I'm fat, I'm lazy, I'm stupid, right? And we've got those messages. And so for most of us, we've got them in there. You've got your variations. I've got my variations. I just shared with you some of the ones that have been there and persistent for me. Doesn't really matter what they are. And I'll show you that in a minute, like what the actual content of the message is, like what words, what the energy is the mouse says. The haters hate, the critics criticize, right? Those who are afraid find things to be afraid of, right? The mouse is critical. It points to what we don't love about ourselves. That might be more palatable rather than hate. So what happens then? Frosting on poop, castle on quicksand. Well, we need to take care of the poop, clean the poop up, build a solid foundation. How do we do that? We learn to love ourselves, right? And you could talk about that in different ways. There are practices, and I'll share with you soon actually what some practices are you can do. Practices to create and build self-love, to learn to love ourselves. Now, I'm going to tell you this. This is interesting. When I first started leading yoga teacher trainings, right, which were really, for me, thinly disguised personal and spiritual development events going back 20 years, I guess, something like that. One of the things that came to me to say, and probably because I heard it from one of my teachers, what we're really here for is to learn to love ourselves. All of our work is to love ourselves, right? Rilke has a great quotation on that. Sri Bhagwan Rajneesh has a great paragraph on that. All of our work, personal development, meditation, therapy, coaching, all of that really is to learn to love ourselves. And I smile and joke about it because I was saying that 20 years ago, and I feel like I just learned it, except it's never complete. I'm not complete with it. I'm still learning it. It's like enlightenment. There isn't unenlightened enlightenment. That's not how it works, right? It's a myth that we've been sold. There are thresholds we cross, though there's always more. There's more awakening possible. So why do people not listen to the mouse? Well, one reason, right, one of the mistakes is thinking, I already did it, right? I was working with someone recently and he had a challenging situation going on with his wife who had what was it? Had a stroke and had some quote disabilities, and she was having a hard time. And in her having a hard time, she was, you could say, this is just one way of putting it, giving him a hard time, right? And she was suffering, and so some of that suffering was coming out, and he got upset at one point, and he was short with her or yelled at her or something like that, and he felt so badly about it. And we were speaking, and I was like, do you see the self-judgment? Do you see how you're judging yourself? And there's a possibility here. First, next step is to get free, is to forgive yourself for that. Well, his response was, oh, I've done that. I've already forgiven myself. Cool. Yes, great. But it's not a one and done. It's not one-time thing for all of us, right? We've got these habitual ways of being that include judging ourselves, thinking we are inadequate in various ways, or hating ourselves. We've gotten them going for a long time. They're normal to us. So we can forgive ourselves and then snap back, fall back into the old way of being. It's easy to do, right? So one of the mistakes people make is thinking, I've done it already, right? Another mistake, or another thing that gets in the way, is they think it's too much. I can't handle it. If I face that, if I invite the mouse, whatever the mouse says, it's going to hurt me so much, it's going to demolish me, right? That self-judgment, if I really allow it, it'll kill me. And it's kind of like that thing where maybe you've had the experience. I've heard of this from a lot of people. I've had it too, right? Which is, I don't want to cry. I feel something in me and it doesn't feel good. And I can feel like coming up, like, and it's going to, and maybe I'm embarrassed to do it with other people, or maybe I'm afraid that if I start crying, I'll never stop. It'll overtake me. So that's a challenge that people get into with the negative self-judgment, the hate, is I think if I actually look at it, if I allow it up, it'll hurt too much. Well, good news, bad news. It will hurt. Yeah, it hurts. Like when I catch myself with self-judgment, right? Which I do frequently, pretty often. Every morning I'm doing my own self-creation process. As I move through the day, I do my best to be aware of feelings and thoughts. And when I get myself into suffering, and when I notice, ooh, there's a self-judgment, I do my best to open up and feel it, and it hurts. Yeah, it hurts, right? And sometimes it brings me to crying for a short time. And this is glorious good news, y'all. Right? If we give the mouse the mic, he doesn't have that much to say. He runs out of gas pretty soon, or she, right? So if we have the courage to say, okay, give it to me, right? Do your worst. Yeah, it might take us to our knees. However, what happens is we get free. Right? I think of Forrest Gump. Do you remember Forrest Gump, the movie? When Captain Dan, okay, I'm not going to do my Forrest Gump imitation. I'll spare you. Captain Dan was up at the top of, there was a big storm and they were out to sea, and Captain Dan was pretty bitter. His life hadn't gone so good. He lost both of his legs in Vietnam, right? And here he is out on this shrimp boat, I think. And then there's this horrific storm going on, and he's, it was a turning point. It was a transformation for him, because he's up on the mast. I don't know what he was doing up there, and lightning's coming down, the boat's rocking, and he's starting with anger. He's like, give it to me. What do you got? Yelling at God. But also the turning point for him was like, you can't hurt me. You can't kill me. Give me your worst. And we can adopt that attitude, right? And if we can take it from ourselves, from the mouse, then we can also take it from other people. So one more illustration. many years ago, I was doing a landmark education training. This was specifically on communication in Brisbane, Australia. And the guy who was leading the seminar, 2-day, 3-day course, whatever it was great. And he told us this story. He told us how he had just been with a whole group of seminar leaders, landmark education, and they're really well-trained, high-level leaders. And they were having a meeting with one of their leaders, who was like one of the top leaders. And it was his job to prepare notes for the top leaders so they would be ready to conduct the meeting. And so he's in the audience, right? And the leader for whom he'd prepared the notes steps up to the podium and looks at the notes and looking at it, flips over this, looking at it, like this, and then says, "This is horrible. Who did this?" Right? What would most of us do in that case? We'd be like, "Not me, no." Right? That's what I would have tended to do probably. He, though, said, "It was me. I did it." And the woman who was the leader looked at him and said, "These are horrible. What's wrong with you?" Can you imagine his response? It's like, "How much time do you got? Let me count the ways." What's beautiful about that is clearly he had done some self-forgiveness, some release, some allowing the mouse to do its worst. So, because when we do that internal work, it doesn't matter what other people think of us, what they say, right? And anytime somebody else out there says, "You suck," whatever version of it is, "You're no good, you're incompetent, you think you're all that in a bag of chips, and whatever it is they say to us, the criticism they give us, it only ever hurts if we believe that ourselves inside, right? If some part of us believes that. So that's useful, right? Because anytime somebody says something, we go, "Ooh, that hurts." We could go, "Hey, that was their problem." Or we can take it inside and go, "You know what? If I face this, if I give the mouse the mic and I do this process, which I'll show you in a minute, because we'll transition to what else you can do to create self-love. If we do that, then what do we get? We get free. We get free. Nothing that they can say or do that will keep me from loving myself, which also means if we get free, then we can be loving to other people. Wow. Because what are their criticisms? Well, they're projection. They're criticisms they have themselves as well. Okay, lest we get too far apart. So what can you do with this? I'm going to give you two major techniques. One is what we call compassionate self-forgiveness. Probably gets its roots mostly from the University of Santa Monica. What do they call it? Master's degree in spiritual studies. No longer exists, unfortunately. Brilliant program. And it goes like this: become aware of the self-judgment. And so what I have done and what I work with my clients on is we create an inventory. We start paying attention. We say, "Okay, mouse, not only am I going to periodically invite you up to the mic, you're riding shotgun with me for the next week. Like, I want to hear 24/7 all the things that I think suck about me," right? All the self-judgments, self-recriminations, ways I don't feel like I'm good enough, inadequate, wrong, bad, whatever. Big list, inventory. Some people 20 pages, 25 pages. Not fun, by the way. That's harsh to feel that, to notice all of that. Wow, I think all of that about me? Gosh. Because then we become aware, like, that's mean, right? If I said those things about someone else, it'd be horrible, right? I would defend if somebody said that to you. I was like, "No." But somehow we ended up believing that it's okay to say it to ourselves. So when we become aware of the self-judgment, the thing we think sucks about ourselves, what do? Well, then we tap into what I call innocence. Innocence means we didn't know any better, right? We were innocent. We didn't realize we were, of course, I'm not going to hit my head against a brick wall on purpose. It was an accident. And my favorite way of thinking of it is like the sweet Southern grandmother who says, "Oh, honey, don't you see? You didn't mean to. You didn't mean to do that." So we feel the pain, the judgment. We connect to the innocence. We didn't mean to do it. We didn't know any better. Now we're aware, right? So then when we connect to those two things, then we can speak these words out loud. I forgive myself for judging myself as ones that I went through many times and still do sometimes. I forgive myself for judging myself as fat. That was a big one for me. I was a fat kid, right? And even when I got healthy, fit, yogi, I still saw myself as fat, judged myself as fat for years. And this still comes up sometimes. So I forgive myself, and we go slow, speak it slowly. Because the point of speaking it, and it is important to speak it, not just write it, to speak it out loud, not just think it, speak it out loud, is to create the feeling, right? Feel the pain of, oh, I've been hitting myself, right? Self-judgment, innocence. I didn't know any better, so now I can release it because now I do know better, right? Know better, do better. I know better, so I can release it and feel. What we feel is, surrender, release, space. I think of it as a bubble, right? We create this bubble and it's like, for a moment at least, and longer is great if that's the way it goes. For a moment, I'm free. I'm free of that self-judgment. Right? In my daughter designed the cover of this book for me, and it was, I had the idea like hot air balloon, right? And how does a hot air balloon work? Well, it goes up, except for if we have, right, the strings attached to what? What are they attached to? Sandbags. What are sandbags here? Sandbags for us are negative self-judgments, self-hate, right? And if we cut those sandbags, we release, we go up, we float, we become who we really are. And there's more to it, right? Release is one part, creation is another part. They're intricately related, though. I forgive myself for judging myself as lazy. Right? Now, my mother told me I was lazy, but it's not her fault. It's me. I ended up believing it, despite all the evidence. So, compassionate self-forgiveness. Hugely important, hugely valuable. There's lots more we could go into on how to do that. Next piece, though, inculcating self-love, conditioning self-love, building self-love. There's one of my favorite books in the last few years, How to Love Yourself. I'm looking for the reference because I may forget the title. How to Love Yourself. Love yourself like your life depends on it. What's his name? Oh, I know I have it here. I'll get it for you. It is, I'll get it in a moment. It's a beautiful Indian name. Let me switch to the other screen here. I'll tell you exactly what it is. It is, thank you for staying with me, Being Patient. Right. The book is Practices book. Oh, yeah, it is. Love Yourself Like Your Life Depends on It by Kamal Ravikant. Right. Kamal Ravikant. And in this book, he goes through some beautiful ways of what he calls creating mental loops. What's a mental loop? It's a thought or an energy, you could call it, or even a feeling, really. It's all connected, thought, feeling. They're that goes through over and over and over and over again, right? Psychologists say 90% of our thoughts, and there are what, like 70,000 of them per day, are the same, right? So mental loops have been not loving, say it that way. So we create loving mental loops. How do we do that? Let's go straight to the most powerful one, right? The one that for many of us, myself included, was like, I'm not doing that, right? Finding ways not to do it. And that is to stand in front of a mirror, close, look at ourself in the mirror and speak out loud, I love you, or I love myself, repeatedly for a duration. Of course, the longer the better. 5 minutes is good. For most of us, especially in the beginning, challenging. Right? I've known people that got there. Okay, I'm going to brave up to do this, right? Because what does it mean? Brave up. Why do I say that? Because again, the mouse, like that can hurt. And if we're going to love ourselves, then we're going to encounter everything that's between us and that. So I've known people get in front of the mirror. They've braved up to it. They look at themselves in the mirror. Tears, like sobs come because it's the confrontation, the realization like, wow, I haven't been loving myself. So that's one of the most powerful ways. What else is great? I love doing this. I learned from him too, is in meditation. And he described this way: put on a song that's a few minutes long, a song that feels good to you, and just say that over and over again. On the inhale, I love myself. On the exhale, just relax. On the inhale, I love myself. On the exhale, just relax. Right? I like to do that. I still do this sometimes while I'm driving in my car. Play a specific song that feels good, and I do my best to speak that mantra on the inhale. Right? 10 breaths worth of it when you wake up in the morning. 10 breaths before you go to bed. All powerful ways of doing it. And here's the thing, again, y'all, it's not one and done. It's something that must be, not must. If we want to love ourselves, if we want to live our potential, if we want to have a vibrant, thriving life, then yes, it's a requirement. If we want to contribute to others in better and deeper ways, loving ourselves is huge. So, I am grateful to you. I love you. I so appreciate that you've been here. I would love to hear from you. I would love to hear from you. How does this land? What do you do to create love in yourself? How does it change your life? Thank you. And I do love you.